Hey, Cisco here. We gotta talk about these Nintendo Switch 2 game prices. So yesterday, the Switch 2 Direct dropped, and right now they're doing the Treehouse Live stuff, right? And so we got so much information. Shout out to anybody who watched my reaction video. I uploaded like a whole hour-and-a-half presentation reaction thing. I did it because I wanted the whole thing documented. I didn't do that with the Switch 1, and I really wanted to do that with the Switch 2 because I didn't have a channel during the Switch launch. So I want my channel to show, I want to go back in 8 years and look back and be like, this is how I reacted. So that's why I did that. There was an unanswered question that everybody had, and they were not revealing it in the Direct, and that was, how expensive is this stuff? Now the Switch 2 is going to be about $450. I think that's pretty standard. I was expecting that, so I don't know. With 4K and everything it does, I think that's a pretty good price. And then it's going to be about $500 if you have it with the digital version of Mario Kart World bundled with it. About the games. So the internet's losing their mind over this because we found out that Nintendo is not just pushing it to $70, they're pushing it further to $80. So they kind of just stayed at $60 when the games lately had been $70, and then they just shot up to $80. Now, not all games are $80. Mario Kart World is $80. And some of the other games like Donkey Kong and the Switch 2 versions of the Switch 1 games with the added content is gonna be $70. But then we have some things out of left field, like the Bravely Default remaster, that's gonna be $40, which is great. I like that. But the problem is now they're doing this whole thing where it's a cartridge, but it doesn't have the game on there. It just has, and you're given a code, a key. Don't lose the key code. And you can't play without the cartridge. So you gotta put the cartridge in. You have the code, and then you have to download the game. Now, there is a lot of discourse online. This is a huge topic. $70, $80 for Nintendo games. And we have I've seen so many people argue for it. So many people argue against it. So let's break this down. And let's get to, I'll get to my opinions, but let's get to what everybody's saying and what's going on. So right off the bat, $70, $80. I think that's really expensive, and so does so many other people. So do, 100,000 people in the Treehouse Live spamming drop the prices. Oof, sheesh. But so many people agree this is pretty expensive. But other people are like, we've come a long way. 4K, higher end graphics, higher processing power. You know what I mean? We're getting these crazy beefed up games now. So why should they stick to the Wii prices of 50, the Switch prices of 60? And if PS5 can do 70, why can't Nintendo? Another argument made for, hey, these are okay prices, is that back in the day, video games used to be more expensive. Now this is a whole other thing. I think this is one of the weakest arguments, and I don't understand people who are saying this, because I'm like, you're eager to spend more money on games, and gotta check up what's up here. What are your priorities if you're excited to pay more money? I don't know. But the argument is that back in the day, games were just as expensive. I've been seeing so many posts saying, oh, back in my day, games were $70, $80, $90, $200, and I didn't complain. Look at Donkey Kong Country 2. That's $90, and I paid that with a big old smile on my face. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And if you did, you're rich. And if you're rich, then that means you're not for the general consumer, general public. Maybe that's not the general audience here. You can buy a copy, but are the other millions and millions of gamers gonna do the same thing? And back in the day, people are like, oh, back in the day you did this. I am from back in the day. I'm a little bit of a youngster compared to the other ones back in the day. But I remember games would go severely on sale. I would buy my games at Blockbuster on clearance. I would buy them in the clearance bucket. I'd buy the shovelware games, and shovelware games used to be $10. They started off at the general price of $30 to $40, whatever, right? But then they would go severely on price. They would let you borrow those games. You could rent them. That's how I played some of my games. I couldn't afford some games, and I would just rent them. And that's how I was able to get a certain amount of games to play. There's a whole difference with that versus now, where there's no way to borrow games, there's no way to have them on sale. Nintendo games don't go on sale. And what am I supposed to do when I want to be a hardcore Nintendo fan? And then there's all of these Nintendo games that are $70, $80 plus. I was already struggling with the $60 price because Nintendo's been really on top of the exclusives, and they've been releasing a game almost every month. Sometimes it's multiple games a month. I remember Animal Crossing and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon came out in the same month. I remember Mega Man Battle Network Collection, and then like the DLC for Xenoblade 3, and then I think Tears of the Kingdom came soon after. Like, it was back to back to back to back. Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. If you want to be a hardcore Pokemon fan, you gotta buy both. And then not even like a month and a half later, Legends Arceus came out. That's 60, 60, 60. The prices add up so much. You know, you might be like, $80 for my favorite game of all time? I don't care, I'll pay it. Okay, but what about all of them together? And for me personally, I'm already picking and choosing. I'm already saying Bravely Default's 40, Instant Cop. Hyrule Warriors, if I'm not the biggest Warrior fan, I'm not gonna pay $70, $80 for the new Hyrule Warriors. So Hyrule Warriors is already cut for me, and I don't do that. With the Switch, with everything being $60, it was always like, oh, these prices sting just a bit, but I'm gonna stick to Nintendo and buy every like possible release. I did so amazing on the Switch library. I think there's only a good 5 to 8 games that I'm missing. And that's pretty good considering all the other games that were released. I've been on top of it. Now I have to already be like, Hyrule Warriors, not getting it. Donkey Kong, I might have to wait. I want to see the reviews first. And now like Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven got announced, but that's for 2026. I'm telling you right now, I love Tomodachi Life. I love Rhythm Heaven. I grew up with those games. I love it. But if I'm paying $70 for Tomodachi Life, I'm paying $80 for Rhythm Heaven, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not paying $70, $80 for Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life. If you guys have played those games, you know that they're not very content heavy. They're more like mini games. And Nintendo's been doing this whole like varying from price to price. So we'll see. Maybe Rhythm Heaven, maybe Tomodachi Life will be $60. Okay, cool. But, you know, that's the whole problem with the $70 to $80 price. Is it worth it? Now we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? You might buy $70, $80 for your favorite game. I know I'm gonna pay $70, $80 for Pikmin and Metroid. I don't have a choice. I have to play those games. But are we gonna convince the general audience to buy that? I already know that video games these days are really expensive. People when it comes to the PS5, people really only spend $70 for the big titles like Spider-Man 2 and God of War, Stellar Blade. You know, those type of games are getting the $70. But what about the smaller games? I don't think, like, if you price, I'm sorry, not to pick on indies, I love indies, but if you're you know, like some of the indie games like Untitled Goose Game, Hades, Undertale, are we gonna spend $70, $80 to try an indie game? Absolutely not. And that's why those are much cheaper, because they know that that's a bit much. These AAA games really kind of take up that $70, $80 space. I don't know. You're gonna have to convince the general public to buy that. The moms with their kids, are they gonna dish out $400 to $500 for a Switch 2, and then on top of that have to buy the SD card separately? On top of that, have to buy all the games at a very high price. Are they gonna be okay with that? You know, I think right now we're in a world where priorities have to be shifted, they have to be changed, and I don't know if Nintendo will necessarily be a priority. I have been a diehard fan of Nintendo since I was introduced to it, and I've wanted all the games ever made. But even I have to start reflecting and being like, is this worth it? Is following this hobby worth it? Because $70 to $80 for video games is a bit much. I put my money where my mouth was with the PlayStation. I was buying every release for PS4 and PS5. I said, it's done. I'm not buying them. I'm gonna wait for Black Friday shopping, to buy 2 get 1 free, that sort of thing. Used. I do that for the PlayStation, and I've been great. I have all the games I need on PlayStation. With Nintendo, I'm gonna have to do the same. I said this before they confirmed you know, these big prices. I said, you know, if they get too expensive, I can't follow, because at some point you gotta reflect on your priorities. For me, I need to grow up, and I need to, you know, I just graduated. I got things that I need, you know, I got debts to pay. I got future to pay for. Like, I want my own house and stuff. And so with that being said, I can't just start forking over $70, $80 for a monthly Nintendo game, especially ones that might not equal that price. So it doesn't matter whether I'm for or against these prices, it doesn't matter. Is the general audience going to be paying these prices? And that's what we have to ask. They mentioned tariffs. That doesn't make any sense because the games are expensive worldwide. They increased the prices in Japan, in Mexico, in Europe. It doesn't matter where you're at. The Nintendo games went up in price. So no tariff arguments here. So I'm going to ask you, my audience, the people watching this video, are you going to pay $70, $80 for every Nintendo title? Are you going to pay for only your favorite ones? Is this a reasonable price? Let me know down below. But I have been just living in these arguments that people love the prices and say that we shouldn't complain. And I think that's just, I'm sorry, but I think it's such a moronic response. It's such a moronic argument. I think you're just arguing for the sake of arguing. I don't think anyone is excited to pay more for video games. So, all right, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.